What's up, Instagram? It's your favorite King Saul. Coming to you live from my trophy room. Just taking some self-care time to remind myself of my many accomplishments. First king, Israel's first king. Let's check in with all of you. I see the questions coming in from Not That David. He's asking about the rumors surrounding what happened with David and Goliath. So there's really not that much tea to spill. It's no big deal. I get it. Everyone loves an underdog story. But I mean, Goliath came out talking all that smack, and yeah, David stepped up. Cool, fine, whatever. You think I didn't loosen the giant up first? My troops were wearing him down for sure. I tried to give David my armor. Seriously, I thought, what could go wrong? With my armor? Turns out, all he needed was a slingshot and some divine luck. Let me see some more of your comments. All right, enough of this little Goliath business. Time to give the people what they want. You know, I've been trying to decide on how I can show some love to all of my wonderful subjects. Well, after looking at the suggestions, I'm letting you be the first to know about Manna Monday. You get some manna, you get some manna, you get some manna. You can stop by any of the local markets and hit up Manna Monday booth and receive your portion. Be on the lookout for me. You never know when I'll pop in. In fact, let's grab a selfie together and post it at #SelfieWithSaul. Let me know what your favorite flavor is. Your favorite flavor of manna, and we'll work it into the rotation. All right, crew, that's enough of royal realness for today. Time for me to go. But make sure you share this in your stories and hit that like button.
Well, like Stephen said, my name is Donnie Carvonen. I've been a pastor here for almost 17 years. I've known Eric for many, many more years than that. I actually cut my teeth as a youth pastor. He was my mentor for many, many years. And so I know he's watching online, so I want to welcome him as well as Pastor AG online. Thank you guys for joining us. We're excited about this. When Pastor Eric and I, a little side note, before I get into the shameless plug for the book, I went to a chiropractor earlier last week, or actually earlier, well, I guess technically last week, and they look on there and they see that your birthday is right around, mine was Friday, and it says, somebody has a birthday, and Eric and I share a birthday week, and so I was so tempted, and I didn't. I was so tempted, because she said, so how old are you? And so I always ask, how old do you think I am? Because I generally look a lot younger than I really am. And she's like, 35, 38. Now, I think she's just being nice. Most people being nice. And I was so close saying, I'm actually 65. I look great for 65. Yeah. And I actually told her, no, I'm 49 now, last in my 40s. But I did tell her I should have told 65. She said, you should do that from now on, because you can start to sell stuff. I can sell all the essential oils and kale. It's like, I used to look like Pastor Eric a year ago. Just kidding, I love you, Eric. No, when Eric and I were talking about a series we wanted to do, we came across this book that it's part of our Shoreline staff repertoire. We've had this in the library for well over 12, maybe 15 years, and our staff has gone through it many, many times, and we wanted to do a study. And when a sermon or a message comes down the pipe that you just want to jump on, I said, I'll throw my hat into the ring for the first week, and he's like, you got it. And so Eric will be hitting cleanup on this series because we love this book, which will be available in the lobby if there's any left. I don't know, we made a plug. There's a few left, so if you want to get into this study. But it's pretty much a story, an in-depth look on the lives of three historical figures. And we find a love story, a warning, and pretty much a practical how to avoid getting hit with a spear. Because pretty much when you look at the story of these kings, and we can find ourselves actually reading along the story and putting ourselves in the story, and we realize that when we make decisions about who's in charge of our life, we put ourselves in one of these three chairs. And so this week, I get to focus on the first chair, which is King Saul, and you guys get to journey along with me. Now, I thought Corey Fosdick, you did a brilliant job as the Saul on screen. It was very good. In fact, we might have to have you do some more cameos. He lived up the part really well. But if you think about it, Saul is sort of most of the time he's a footnote to all the accomplishments that David did, and I can understand that. And most people in church culture don't really follow who Saul was. They don't know the backstory. And that's quite okay. A lot of times they don't even know who their pastors are. And so if they don't know the pastors, they don't know the backstory. If you want to know a little bit about me, I haven't been up here in a while, but I want to tell you guys that before I was a Christian, I was a volleyball player. That's how I saw myself, as someone who got kicked out of one school, went to another school, a small school, became a big fish in a small school being my graduating class was 25. And so for our school to be good at volleyball was rare. I came in the golden age of our school where they had just won 2 state championships. I came into the thing and I was like, I want to be on board. So I was all volleyball 100%. Only started one position in the back row, defense, because I was the little small guy in the back row. But as years went on, we won a couple more championships, and I became a big fish in a small pond. Go up to a high school, go to college. And what I learned of being about big fish in a small pond is you were not only a good athlete, but you actually had to coach your own team too, because a lot of our good players who graduated came back and helped coach because small budgets, small schools, and they wanted to keep the legacy. So I was growing up with, I got to maintain this. I don't want to be the one that lets them down. And unfortunately, as luck would have it, you run out of people if you don't have people coming up that are good. But we had our glory years, went to college, and immediately jumped right into the volleyball scene. Also, about that time, I had started my relationship with God, so I had a big change of identity, who I was. I was like, people knew me either through my faith or through volleyball, and often through both, because I didn't really separate the two because I was so gung-ho. Went to college, my first semester, had a lot of my scholarships because academics actually went from being a dropout for school to valedictorian. No, it's class of 25, but still went to a 4.0 GPA, got some scholarships and whatnot. So my first semester, being a type of personality, I was like, I'm going to do this guns blazing. I went and took 21 and a half credit hours. And now most of you guys who don't know that 12 is considered full-time. 21 is full time. It's like you are the FOOL. And so I did it. I thought it was a strategic. It worked out for me in the long scope, but in those few years, in the beginning, it was tough trying to keep that pace. But I also went in there with the expectation. I volunteered and became an assistant head coach because I had some coaching experience. Plus, I wanted to learn how to coach college level because volleyball was all about it. And so I took an intramural team that beat the senior team. I stacked a team. In fact, when I saw players, like if I saw Corey, I was like, all right, you look like a good outside hitter. You over here. Yeah, and I'd see people and I'd start to see them as assets. Because as a coach, you say, this person is 6'3", probably middle outside, he could be good. 5'5", you're probably a libero defense. And so to make me look good, I found players that played look good. And so I was determined not to lose because we were upsetting all the big teams, and I love being the underdog coming from a small school. And so as my reputation came along, people knew that if they saw me, there's volleyball happening. Now, most of you guys are good citizens. You probably have a first aid kit in your car or something like that. I had a volleyball pump and a volleyball, just in case a spontaneous game would happen to break out. I could roll up my sleeves and say, all right, I'm ready for this. Put me in, coach. I've been waiting all this time, Just because my identity was so tied to it that if there was volleyball going on at a youth group, I'd go to that youth group. It was one of those things that drew me in. Now, again, a lot of the things of that was actually very healthy. But as most young adults in college, we tend to excess. Did I mention I took 21 and a half credit hours? And so not only do you have 25 hours worth of schoolwork to accomplish, I had 18 books to read that first semester. And then I volunteering 20 hours coaching. Oh, by the way, I also started a USAV men's travel club team that we played Florida State, Vanderbilt, and all that because I wanted to beat the local schools. Oh, and if there was any open gyms or local tournaments, this guy was there. And so as I started this journey, my kingdom, my throne of volleyball grew and grew in my mind. which made it harder to lose because I started being the person who hated losing more than liking to win. You ever been in that position where, in fact, when you're winning 99% of your games, when you lose, you just remember that point. Even though you won the tournament, but you missed 3 serves, you're like, that was a terrible tournament. I mean, it was the demand I put on myself and was unreal, but what I thought other people saw in me was also unhealthy. And when people would ask me, hey, you met JJ, what is JJ? And my first response would be, well, he's okay, but he's not really good on the outside hitter. No, JJ as a person. Well, I don't know, I didn't really get to know him. All I know is his volleyball stuff. So I started to see people only for what benefited me. You can tell a lot about another person when what you say about another person tells a lot about you, a lot about ourselves. And there was a period of time and again, that's the downside of coaching, is when you see people as assets or chess pieces or how they benefit your team, not as people that this person's a mother, father, they have actually a soul, a life, hobbies, weaknesses, they cry, they laugh, they're just not, there's a backstory. But at that time, all I had time for, again, because I was so busy, was how it benefited me and my throne. That can be a little crazy. But if you would be totally honest, I think some of us, I'm not the only person that's ever felt the stress of being number one and create your own throne. If you ever walked that close to your work, so close that you work for the job promotion that you do twice the amount of work for half the pay, you see your family half the amount of hours, the job says this is going to cost you 50 hours and you put in 60 because this overtime is going to make a difference someday. And then you have to maintain that now because in order to maintain that, and then what am I going to do to surprise them next year? And so you add more to your plate. You think about, I found the right person, but I got to win their affection. So your whole life wraps around courting this one person. It's almost like your personality changes. You lose your identity wrapped around this person. I've seen people lose their identity wrapped around their kid and their kid's schedule, from soccer practice to Wanas to all the various things that kids go to. And again, these could be all good things, but somehow we lose ourselves in the busyness, in the collection of great things, much like King Saul. He had a lot of great things, and he lost his identity somewhere in the journey. And it could be good things that you lose yourself, like being good at volleyball. Saul was a good military person, come to find out. You could be the best in your company at X, Y, and Z. So now you feel the pressure. I have to read every software update to stay current, to be the tech guru. And so you feel like you have to watch the TED Talks and Steve Jobs for endless hours just to stay on the cutting edge, because if someone were to come to you with a question, if you didn't have it, you're like, uh-oh, I lost my reputation, my respect. And you could be the guy that's in charge of the HOA, and your yard has won Best of Destin for the last 6 years running, and all of a sudden the guy across the street from you, Ron, and he puts 5 inflatables up. You're like, come on! So now you put 6 inflatables, and then you got the strobe lights, you've got to go into the music, and now it's almost like this battle of egos, and your wife is like, why are you going so crazy? It's like it's becoming one of those holiday parody movies, and you're like, but I have to. And you wondered, is it just me, or am I going crazy? If you ever had those moments of insanity at being good, you might be a good candidate for chair number 1. I think we all at times can have chair number 1 candidate qualities. There's a guy in the Bible named Apostle Paul. He was actually a chair number 1 candidate. He was a great scholar, and he bragged about how good he was, about his knowledge and stuff, and he was talking to these people about how the kingdom and how Jesus came, and in his backstory, I'm going to steal from a little bit in Acts 13. He sets up the story of Jesus by telling about the kings of the story, how we went from Moses to the judges to the kings. Well, it's a very simple story and timeline. When Moses moved people out of Egypt, it was a divine miracles. God did everything. He not only beat the Egyptians at the Red Sea, with the water it was all divine. Moses didn't even have a sword. And then all of a sudden, when Joshua, his understudy, took them into Jericho, it wasn't, again, their tactics and their airstrikes. It was God, again, leading them into this divine victory. And all throughout that, when they found the land that they were supposed to settle in, they went around and got established. And these judges ruled for 450 years. And many of them you never even heard about. You may have heard of Samson. How many have heard of Samson? He ruled for like 40 years. And again, these guys were not just like Gandalf the Great going and just giving wisdom here and here. These were like judge, jury, and executioner. They had a literal license to kill. Because they not only represented God, but they represented all the judicial branches of the government. And so people feared not just Israel, they feared Wyatt Earp coming into town. They feared when Samson came into town. They feared when Samuel came into town, because not only would they speak what God had spoken, they would be discerning, they could tell the truth from a lie, but they also had carried a lot of power and authority. And so here is Samuel. Now he's getting up years of age. And the people look at him and they're like, you know what? I see this country, this nation, they all have a warrior king. We want a warrior king. We know God has delivered us from all these other things, and it was a long time since we were in Egypt, but we want to be like them. And of course, Samuel's getting a little discouraged. And so instead of taking it on the people, Samuel goes to talk to God, and this is what it says in Samuel 8:7. And the Lord told him, listen to all that the people are saying about you. It is not that they're rejecting, it's not that they are rejected, but they have rejected me as their king. And that sort of put things in perspective, because Samuel was taking it personal, because he lived his whole life dedicated to speaking God's word and doing what it had to be done. And now the people were turning their back on him, but it actually was them turning their back on God, because they wanted something different. They wanted to be like the other neighboring cities. They didn't want a spokesman for God. They wanted a champion that they could get behind. They wanted a warrior king. And so God says, you know what, if you get a king, and Samuel warned them, he says, if you get a king, he's going to take your best of men, he's going to take your best of women, he's going to make you pay taxes, he's going to and he went through the list of all these things. Are you sure you want this? Because I've been fighting your battles, now you're going to fight your battles, and you're going to pay the costs and casualties and costs. And they're like, but yeah, we still get a warrior king, right? Okay, that sounds good, we'll work it out. So, but then I like this, that God offers him a soft out. He says, all right, we'll give you a king. I'll pick a good king for you, a warrior king. But if this person follows me, he'll be blessed. If he follows me, the rest of you will be blessed. He'll live under proxy, under his decisions and authority. But if he doesn't, and if you follow and do all the things like the other nations, you'll have ruin. They're like, sounds good to me. And so Samuel goes out and finds this character, much like Corey Fosdick, a very good-looking, tall, scrappy young man. He was about 30 when Samuel when Saul became king, he was about 30. So about your age, you're a young guy. And so he puts him in position. Now, Saul was different than everyone else because he was about a foot taller. So he stood out. He was very handsome. He stood out well, spoke well. And God blessed him with favor. And in the beginning of his relationship, he had a really good understanding who God was and understood God's voice, had some spiritual moments. And Samuel and him, they sort of led the nation. I love the timeline, what happened then. Let's take a look at this picture here. This is a map of Israel. Wow, there it is. And the first couple of years, you think, okay, he became king. What do you do? Think about what George Washington had to do when starting the nation. Not only do you have to start up a monarchy, but you have to put up all the judicial styles and branches, who's accountable for what, nations, tribes, clans, had to organize a military, a way of governing, all those things, taxing. They never taxed, so they had to figure that all out. So this guy was successful in doing all those things, and in the first year, he started popping off these battles. This is his first year. He had at Gilead, the Moabites, the Amorites, the Edomites, Arms Rehab, I don't know if it's Ams Rehab or Arms Rehab, kings of Zoban, the Philistines, the Amalekites, and the Michmash. All those, year one. Overachiever? Yeah. His first battle, the very first one, it was just him and his son, his teenage son. He was 30-ish like Corey. And he went out and fought, and all the people, the hundreds of people, a couple hundred people with him, had pitchforks and sticks, because they weren't a military nation. But near the end of year one, they had all the spoils of all the victories, and they not only conquered people, but they would capture and now indenture them into armies. So their army grew bigger and bigger and bigger. And as the army grew bigger and bigger and bigger, it became more complex. The personality shifted, and Saul began to yearn to please the people more than listen to the words of Samuel of God. And as his ego continued to grow, his victory started mounting up. And that started influencing some of his other people. They started taking things a little off script and started doing their own things. Like his son went with his armor bearer and says, I see now a post of just 20 people. You and me, verse 20, let's get it on. And they beat 20 of this patrol, which spontaneously got the rest of the army going in that direction. It was like, holy smokes, this people are not only favored, they're unstoppable. And of course, Saul's head started to get a little big, and God goes up to Samuel again and says, all right, this is the next plan I have for you. I want you to focus on this nation to do this. This is going to be a brutal one. This is an evil nation. I need you to do this. Here's your tactics. It's like getting drone footage, insight. This is how you need to defeat them. This is pretty much God saying this is the how-to, which is, again, big favor. And Samuel's like, okay, I'll tell Saul that. When told Saul that, Saul's like, got it. But this is what happens. Samuel 15:12, it says, early in the morning, Samuel got up and went out to meet Saul. But he was told, Saul has gone to Carmel. There he has set up a monument in his own honor and has turned and gone on down to Gilgal. Now when Samuel reached him, Saul said, the Lord bless you. I have carried out all the Lord's instructions. That must have been frustrating for Samuel, because if Samuel knows when people are lying or telling half-truths, not only does God see it, but he could hear the animals that he was not supposed to take. He was supposed to wipe them out. And he confronts Saul, and first Saul lies, then he blame shifts. It was the people. It's that I want to make them happy. Oh, then he meant religious. Then we'll use them for worship. We'll use them for sacrifices. And this is where it's like, obedience is better than sacrifice. It wasn't about the sacrifices. I wanted you to be trustworthy with leading a nation and putting me first. But Saul put himself first. Then he gets sort of remorseful, and he starts to back up and says, okay, I'm sorry. I know I did wrong, but please don't make a scene in front of my officers, in front of my men, because I have a reputation. And this got Samuel even more upset, because he wasn't inwardly sorry that he did something, he disobeyed. He was sorry that he's getting publicly outed. Again, his ego. He was more concerned about his throne than actually listening to God. And Samuel is getting even more frustrated. Now, Samuel's probably in his late 70s, 80s. He's older. And here's Saul, and he's probably, I'd guess, 30s, late 30s or whatnot. And he's like, no, in fact, we're going to take the lineage out from underneath you, because you've shown that you can't obey, and we're going to put someone else. And then Saul gets desperate, because that means that's his reputation. He grabs his cloak and tears it, and Sam's like, and worse, what you just did, this shows that your kingdom is going to be torn in half. This is the visual example of the chaos that you brought, now you're bringing onto your people. Again, from the forewarning of what God promised them in the beginning. And Samuel was sad. He's like, at least when we go out there, make it look like we're good, we're okay. Have you ever had stuff going on in your life where your life is totally devastated and you try to put on that fake Facebook post face? Go to church and you just got done yelling and having a fight in the car. And then you go in and people ask, how are you doing? You're like, glorious, brother. It's a great day in church today. Love it. As a pastor, I get this a lot. This time I usually tell people when I'm coaching my pastor, because people are real to me when they find out I'm just a volleyball player. But when they find out I'm a pastor, immediately it's like, well, praise Jesus. I hadn't been to church in a while. It turns into a confessional. I know I need to read my Bible, but I read my Bible, and I'm like, dude, you're just dropping F-bombs over there, and I have a problem with that. Why are you lying to me now? I don't think of you any less or more for what you do. You're still my bro. And it's like, okay, then I'll go to church. No, it's not a manipulation to get you to go to church. But here it is, this guy, he's trying to manipulate Samuel into maybe taking back some of that judgment. No. In fact, that was the last time Samuel and Saul ever met. And so Saul would go on for years, maybe even a decade. He was probably in his 50s, late 50s, probably early 60s when he came across David, when we hear that little story that we saw in the Instagram post, which is sort of cute. And so we think about this, years have passed, and now Saul, his things that got him to his point in his career are starting to fade. He's no longer as strong and scrapping as what we saw of Corey Fosdick. He's now aging. He's sort of like Mike Tyson at 58. Anybody saw that fight? Well, imagine Mike Tyson at 58, still has the talk and ego, but then meeting Tyson Fury at 24. Another boxer, a lot bigger reach. Now he's just been out-Sauled. Saul was known for being the biggest, the strongest, and he was known for being awesome. But he wasn't trained to be a fighter. He just had favor of God, and then he became a great warrior all throughout. Goliath, on the other hand, was naturally bigger. He was huge, a foot taller than Saul, and he was trained since he was a youth to be an assassin, a killer. And he was good at trash talking. So he would instill fear everywhere he went. And so when Saul comes across Goliath, you start to see who he really is, because now what got him to his position can't keep him in his position. And he's starting to realize there's a gap there. Enters David, who is so not like Saul. He's just a teenager. He's barely even out of puberty. He couldn't even fit into the king's armor, and the armor was offered to him, And not only did that, when Saul was trying to qualify and screen him, because he was the only person that was willing to take the tax-free, all right, who wants to go against Goliath? You get no taxes. And you get married into the royal family. No one would take it. But here's this kid, comes up, he's like, who's that guy talking trash about our nation and our God? I'll take care of him. They're like, this little kid? No, I'm okay. I know what I do. I can handle myself. I'm a shepherd. I'm outdoorsy. I know you see the Stratocaster guitar, you might think I'm a Metro guy, but actually I could kill lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. So, but what I've noticed is Saul noticed favor and anointing and a calling on this kid's life that he knew, that he felt, that he no longer had. And it's like, I'm going to recruit him to be one of mine. All right, go out and do it. And so, of course, David goes out there with everything that he was prepared for. He went with what he brought with. He wasn't like he was training like 6 months for the Tyson fight. He just went out with the strength of who he was, knowing that he's going to depend totally on God. And on his way to Goliath, that's when he got his stone. That's when he picked up his ammunition. So he didn't come in there loaded to bear. God prepared in advance. He agreed to the contract of the fight without getting his guns and ammo. Because he says, I put my trust in God. He walks out there and guys trash talking, and David goes up, oh, you think that is, and he gives it right back, but not in an arrogant way, but in a confident way, talking about the glory of God. And then he lands with this. This is his landing in Samuel 17:47. All those gathered here will know that it's not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, but the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. Mic drop. Boom. There later on, Saul's saying, who is this kid? He's seeing something. So he immediately promotes David, because obviously he's one of the best snipers. He's going to be part of my elite force. I'm going to make him an armor bearer. I'm going to put him close. And so people saw this as a mark of honor, but Saul was also thinking, I got to keep an eye on this guy. Keep your enemies closer, because this guy's a threat. This might be someone who could potentially take me out. So he's busy, brings him in, and he finds out that he's good at music, and he's helped set the patio band. He gets a really good vibe going. And Saul is having a hard day, and he's getting jealous, and he's getting mad, and he's listening to the patio band, listening to David play the Stratocaster, and he's like, if I kill him right now, all my problems will be over. And he literally throws a spear and misses. Like David had this spidey sense that he just missed. Now, granted, maybe Saul being 60-something wasn't throwing a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, but still, this guy had been killing people for 20-something years. And obviously, David dodges. He's like, haha, good one, Saul. I don't know what he said, but it would probably make me miss a beat. I know, maybe a little rhythm change. I know what happens when the drummer goes off beat. Everything just screeches to a halt. I bet the whole room just stopped for a second. And they just kept playing right afterwards, just like, oh, that's just the king. But that was just the beginning of the progression of the king's insanity. He went from that throwing spear to the point where it's like, all right, I gotta get him out of here. I'm going to put him in charge of 1,000 soldiers. He has no military training, so let's see how he handles the bureaucracy of managing men. And if they don't kill him, the Philistines will. The Amorites will kill him. And David just one-ups it. He just takes that challenge humbly, leads those 1,000 people and makes them better than they ever were before, has the favor of God, and they do more than what Saul was, and now Saul was afraid of him. And of course, you hear this story where he hears back from the people. It says this, and Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands. And so Saul was very angry, and this refrain displeased him greatly. They have credited David with tens of thousands? He's thought, because he's been doing this for 20 years, and here's this punk kid. But with me, with only thousands? What more can he get but the kingdom? Of course, now he's feeling really threatened. And so he goes on and trying to figure out ways to first secretly get rid of David. Now remember, he promised his daughter's hand and free taxes, so to opt into that, he gives David a secret mission. All right, and what you do to win my approval, since you're a poor person, you don't have a dowry to gift, the royalty, to buy in. It's like the ante, you don't have the buy-in chips. What I need you to do is you have to kill 100 Philistines, and as a trophy, I want you to bring back their foreskin. And David's like, did you say foreskins? I was like, okay, well, that's a good way, because you know you're not going to get any Israelites, so it's got to be someone who's pagan. Little circumcision joke. All right. So he comes back and he says, here's your 100, and I'll raise you 100. He brings back 200. Dang. To get the no taxes and to get the daughter, I guess, is that where we get the no tax on tips from? I don't know. I'm going to write that down. Write that down. Not using third service. Was that the tipping point? All right. So obviously now, David he's noticing something. That was a weird request, but he does it. And of course, now he gets to marry, and his daughter hears through the court that the king wants to send an assassin. Michael tells David to put an idol or statue in the bed. It's almost like a cartoon with a wig, put the blanket over, and they come in, dang it! And then, of course, now the king is mad at his daughter. And that wasn't just his daughter. Then later on, Jonathan comes in the picture, David's best friend. And David's like, hey, I think your dad doesn't like me. He's trying to kill me. Did I do something wrong? I mean, I know I brought him extra foreskins, but that doesn't mean he needs to kill me. No, it's like, and Jonathan, of course, he's like, no, there must be a miscommunication. I'll go talk to my father. And he talks to his father. His father gets furious and actually throws spears at Jonathan. Again, now you can see his mental state. He's taking it out on his family. He's taking it out on people. David flees. He hides out in a temple, gets some food, gets some gear, and he goes running off. Saul hears about it, sends more or less another assassin, kills the high priest who gave him shelter and food, then kills 85 people who on staff, the temple workers, then kills the entire city of Nob for having that temple and having that priest. This is a megalomaniac, crazy king. Sort of reminds me of some other tyrants that we've seen in history of the world wars who accomplish such great things, and all of a sudden, in fighting for the power, they start killing their generals and other generals' family members. We see this in monarchies where kings kill princes. Again, what gets them in the power, they feel they have to keep in power. And being a warrior king, he's defending it with what he does. And now that it's all built on his own ego and himself, not trusting in God, he's doing what crazy kings do. And much like the path of Hitler, we find out his army is about to be defeated, he's about to be captured, and he commits suicide. Not a great tale ending for King Saul, who started out with a warrior's accolades and so much promise. So how can we avoid finding out the ruin that comes from sitting in chair number one? What are some ways that we can avoid those traps? There's 3 traps. We're going to go through them quickly. First one, the mad trap number 1 is comparison. When you start to compare yourself with other people, compare yourself with the younger you, compare yourself with what you think God should, like, I should be entitled this. That's the first trap. You start to see people as caricatures and as threats, and in your mind, you're throwing spears at them. It's like, you, JJ, if I had, whatever it may be, which is only the first step of madness. Because I'm sure King Saul wasn't the first time he thought about throwing a spear at David was at that time. So how do we avoid this? we start to see this question come to life. How does Christ view this? How does he view this person? Does he see JJ has a family, that he's a hard worker, that he's a loyal person to Shoreline? Or do you just settle to be lazy and just make a caricature? Oh, he's this. Oh, he's a Michigan fan, and all Michigan fans are filming. Oh, he's a Democrat, and all Democrats are boom. Oh, he's a Republican. And you just characterize someone and just start throwing spears. If that is you, be careful, because that's a candidacy for chair number 1. But if you see people the way that Christ sees them, then we're prone to respond the way that Christ would respond. So anytime that you start to see yourself throwing spears in your brain, check the position of your heart in the chair, the throne that you're sitting on. Number 2, compromise. Mad trap number 2 is compromise. When your values and your goals start to soften, the things that you promised now are becoming half-truths. When you're having to justify to your spouse, to your boss, your kids, why you're not keeping your word because something else is more important. Whatever that other thing is more important has now pushed you into this category, which now you're living out of balance. And one way to avoid that is stay coachable with authentic accountability. That someone can speak into your life that moment and say, hey, this is not you. Why are you acting like this? Why are you being the fool? I missed you at soap Monday morning at 6:30 at Chicken and the Egg for Men. Shameless plug. Why weren't you there? Well, this is, if you have people, authentic relationships, you can have authentic accountability. Saul didn't have that. He distanced himself from not only his family, but from the Word of God. He distanced himself. The only thing that he fed was the public image. He let clickbait and the likes on Instagram and all that be his self-determining value. Number 3, mad trap is control. When you think that you can manipulate something to your own better, you can spin. Well, this wasn't this, it's actually this. Well, technically this. And you try to use your words either to change the situation or about someone, how they view someone or how they think about someone, and you to your own good or to their detriment. Word is gossip, but I would like to say the way that you avoid this is you speak words of life. Speak words of life. Anytime you use manipulation always starts with putting man first. If your words are about you being the hero of your story, about you promoting yourself, you, or me, you might be in line for chair number 1. You might have success. We have a lot of politicians, a lot of athletes, a lot of prominent stars, great Sauls, get the stats done. But in the end, if they stay in this chair, it leads to the chaotic, crazy ruin. But if we can catch ourselves and make a change, much like the Apostle Paul, who actually was named Saul, came in encounter with Jesus Christ, changed his worldview of what I can do on my own and put Christ first, he was able to change the world. 2,000 years later, we're still reading about what he's done, whereas before he would just been a footnote to someone who watched Stephen getting stoned. So, our identity is not determined by our thrones, but by our Creator. And so if you don't know your Creator, you're going to have a hard time maintaining the right identity without being pulled into this constant battle of trying to please the people, please the populace, or make it egocentric about yourself. So the question I want to leave you with before we dismiss here is God the hero of my story, of your story? If you have a decision and you're wondering, is this putting me in this chair? Answer this question. Does this make me the hero? Or is this an opportunity to showcase God? Saul was all about making himself look good. David was like, to God be the glory. Was he honest and brutal? Read a psalm. He'd tell you all the truth, and he was passionate, but at the end it says he'd always point back to God. He had a different heart. Where's your heart? In my story in volleyball, I was fortunate to have good friends in my circle that when I was going really tight into this volleyball identity, I'd say, hey man, is this right? I think I should take a break. And that was a lot, because I was leaving them literally hanging on tournaments. And they said, no, I know it's going to suck that you're not playing but we love you more for who you are than what you can do. And you need people in your life to be able to say that we will suffer with you in the loss because there's something greater in the end. If you don't have people in your life, if you don't have someone you can talk with, we got some people over here in the prayer area that can help talk you through some issues, can pray with you, to minister with you. You got Pastor AG online who can talk with you, because there's a bigger story that God is doing in your life, bigger than that chair, because those chairs will come and go. They're just that's just a stewarding campaign. But who you are is eternal. There's a bigger story, his story, that we get to play a part in it because he's the star. He's the one who's the Alpha and the Omega, the writer of the story. We play a part in his story. And by the way, spoiler alert, he wins. When we align ourselves with the author of the story, we win. The end story is always going to be better than what we can write on our own. You saw that with Saul. You saw that with all the crazy people. This chair leads a certain direction, absolutely. But the way through Christ, with Christ being the center of your worldview, when you attach your identity to what he says, that doesn't shift or change. When Paul sees changes, whether you're 18 years old. Did I show a picture of what I looked like when I was 18? Throw that up there just for giggles. You got that? The falling asleep? That's not me back there. I think they're sleeping back there. But you don't have to compare yourself. There I am. That's when I was 150 pounds. But you don't have to look back at yourself and say, if I can't maintain that in the vertical leap back then, so I'm no longer who I am now. You can actually look at Christ as, well, that was good then, because God needed me that then. Now I'm designed for what God needs me right now. And understand that there's a win story behind that your ego is not attached to it. What a great way to lead with confidence, with peace, when without arrogance. Imagine that's the gift you bring to the holidays. It's not about the drama of the turkeys, but actually loving people for who they are. Father, we just thank you for the opportunity to express and share your love, that we can move and get out of that seat right now and put you there. Lord, we realize that it's not our story to be the hero, Lord. You are the hero of the story. It's by what you did on the cross that gave us a chance to not only find forgiveness, but also to step into favor and to follow your path and live a full and complete life that changes destinies, not just creates monuments of our own life. Help us make the right decisions this week as we learn to love you and learn to love others the way that you would love them. In your name we pray. Amen. Now, as you guys are heading out, shameless plug, you have an opportunity to pick up this book. We continue this story and dialogue in our SOAP conversations all throughout the week. Men's SOAP, women's SOAP. SOAP is scripture, observation, application, prayer. It's a simple Bible process that we use to keep the whole church body together on. You'll be reading more about David and Saul and the other kings. And you'll also find out that these three thrones are all successful, but they're very close in description. What changes the differences between the two couldn't be any more different than the characters I just talked about. In fact, the other two, they actually had the same bloodline but had two different hearts. And you're going to hear about that next week. God bless.